I'm Zach Fore, Pioneer Field Agronomist. I'm out in a field of corn today that was planted 7 weeks ago. Right now it's in the V8 stage. It's growing really rapidly, using a lot of nutrients and water, and in particular nitrogen. Even though these plants are pretty good size, they've only used at this point about 20% of their total nitrogen needs. And what we see is that even corn that's in the tasseling stage has only taken up about 60% of the total nitrogen that plant will need. So there's another 40% that it can use. So we can manage nitrogen and assess nitrogen needs all the way through corn development, and we have equipment now that's even able to put on corn, nitrogen onto corn that's near tasseling or even at the tasseling stage. So we're going to talk about the nitrogen needs of corn. Nitrogen in corn is one of the most complicated issues that we deal with. If you want a good lesson in chemistry and biology, just study nitrogen management in corn. At the beginning of the year when we fertilize for a corn crop, we don't really know if that corn crop is going to need 100 pounds of nitrogen or 300 pounds of nitrogen because of all the complex things that are going on. So why is nitrogen so complicated and so difficult to manage? Well, first of all, corn plants take up only two different forms of nitrogen, either nitrate or ammonium. Those are the only two forms that corn can take up. There's plenty of nitrogen around. Our atmosphere is about 79% nitrogen, but it's in the N2 form and plants are unable to take that form up. And so when we supply nitrogen to the plant, we want to supply it in a form that's either ammonium or nitrate so that plant can take that up. So the key thing about those two forms is that they behave very differently. First of all, ammonium. Ammonium is a cation. It's got a positive charge. It adheres to soil particles. So when we have exchange sites in that soil, ammonium will adhere to those exchange sites and it will stay there until the corn plant takes it up or until it's converted to nitrate. One of the major challenges managing nitrogen on corn is we can't keep the nitrogen in the ammonium form. The bacteria in the soil quickly convert ammonium to nitrate. Nitrate is an anion. It's got a negative charge. It does not adhere to soil exchange sites, and consequently it can be leached through the soil. So if you get rainfall, nitrogen can be leached down below the root system and unavailable for plant uptake. In addition, the oxygens can be taken off nitrate in saturated soils, resulting in the denitrification loss of nitrogen to the atmosphere. So there are two major ways that we can lose nitrate from the system. So the form of nitrogen that we used is important. What form was it, and then when was it applied? And really we're trying to understand when would it have been converted to nitrate, and then what was the loss potential of the nitrate after that point. There are other factors that complicate nitrogen management in corn also. One of those is that there's nitrogen being mineralized from the soil at all times. So the higher the soil organic matter, the more nitrogen is mineralized. And when we have warmer, moister conditions, that will create more rapid conditions for mineralization also. So we need to know the input side. What did we apply? When did we apply it? What's happened since that happened? But there's also the output side, and that is how much of that nitrogen is being taken up by the corn plant. And all of these factors contribute to the status of where our nitrogen is at. What did we apply? When did we apply it? What have the weather conditions been since we applied it? In particular, how much rainfall, because rainfall has so much impact on nitrate leaching and denitrification potential in soils. How much has a crop taken up? In addition to these factors, soil properties are also really important. How much organic matter is in that soil? That will dictate how much mineralization potential we have in that soil, as well as how much leaching potential is there in that soil, and that would affect the amount of denitrification and nitrate leaching that could occur. With all these factors affecting nitrogen in corn, how do we manage it? Well, to start with, we start with kind of an average rate based on the response in a lot of research studies, and then we monitor the crop from that point. And before we had more sophisticated tools, what we would use is a nitrogen worksheet to determine if sometime during the season we needed to apply additional nitrogen. And that worksheet really wasn't any more complicated than a number system where you assess what did I apply, when did I apply it, what have the conditions been since that time, and then what does a crop look like. And we'd assign numbers to each of those three factors, come up with a total number, and that would determine whether we needed to add more nitrogen or not. And at that point, even if it did say that we needed to add more nitrogen, we really didn't have a good idea of how much we should add. So it's clear that additional tools to manage nitrogen in corn would be extremely helpful. And that's of course where Encirca Nitrogen was born. Encirca Nitrogen takes into account all the factors that are influencing the amount of nitrogen you've got available to that corn crop. What did you apply? When did you apply it? What have the weather conditions been since that time? What has the crop done since that time? How much has been mineralized from the soil on a soil by soil basis in that time? And then very importantly, what's the weather doing? Both temperature and rainfall are important. Rainfall is so important because it affects where that nitrate is and if it's still available to the plant or not. And also temperature is important because it affects crop growth and rate of growth as well as the amount of mineralization from the soil. In addition to taking into consideration the previous weather that's occurred right at that field, Encirca also uses weather projections to estimate whether the amount of nitrogen is going to be adequate or not. And that looks at a 50-year weather history and projects kind of the average weather that would occur from the date that you're at going forward and whether you are likely to be adequate for nitrogen or not. Nitrogen is essential to profitable corn production. It's an expensive input. When we lose it, there are environmental consequences to that. So there are all kinds of reasons for us to do a better job of managing nitrogen in our cornfields. And Encirca Nitrogen is a very powerful tool to help us to do that.
That concludes this Pioneer Growing Point Agronomy video podcast. Visit our page on pioneer.com and follow us on Twitter and Facebook for more agronomy insights.